pregnant bobcat, her belly heavy with unborn kits, prowls through a shadowy forest, desperate for a quiet den to give birth. She's tired, exposed, and has no clue that a nightmare is stalking her. A monstrous 12-meter serpent with eyes like cold steel, slithering silently in her wake. In an instant, her moment of rest becomes a deadly snare as the snake strikes, wrapping her in a suffocating grip. She's battling for her life and her kits when out of nowhere, a mysterious figure steps in. But hold on, this isn't the hero you're expecting, and what unfolds next will blow your mind. Get ready for a tale of survival, betrayal, and jaw-dropping twists. In the dense heart of a sprawling forest, where ancient pines tower overhead and the ground is thick with fallen leaves, a lone bobcat moves with quiet resolve. Her tawny fur, dappled with dark spots, blends into the undergrowth, but her sharp green eyes gleam with purpose. She's pregnant, her first litter, and instinct drives her to find a safe haven, a hidden hollow or rocky crevice where her kits can be borne away from prying eyes and hungry jaws. Her swollen belly weighs her down, her steps cautious as she navigates roots and brambles. She's been roaming for days, fueled by a fierce need to protect the life stirring within her. At last, she finds a promising spot, a shallow den beneath an uprooted tree, its tangled roots forming a natural roof. The earth is soft, cushioned with moss and dry leaves, and the surrounding thickets shield it from the wind. She paws at the ground, circles once, then settles with a low grunt, her sides rising and falling as she rests. The rustle of the forest soothes her, and she shuts her eyes, believing she's secure. But in this wild, unforgiving place, safety is a lie. Something sinister has been tracking her every move. Unknown to the bobcat, this den isn't unoccupied. Beneath the roots, coiled in a dark hollow, lurks a giant serpent, a freakish predator with scales like blackened iron. This isn't your average snake. It's a colossal beast that's ruled this forest by ambushing anything that dares wander too close. For days, it's followed the bobcat, observing her sluggish gait, her round belly, her growing fatigue. To the serpent, she's not just prey, she's a banquet, a reward worth biding its time for. As the bobcat's breathing slows, the snake stirs. Its enormous body glides silently over the dirt, blending with the shadows of the den. The leaves barely shift, and the bobcat's keen ears pick up nothing. Then, in a flash, it attacks. The serpent lunges, its fangs grazing her flank as she twists awake with a hiss, but it's too late. The coils snap around her, tightening with merciless strength. She snarls, a piercing cry of rage and agony that rattles the forest, her claws raking at the snake's tough hide. The serpent doesn't waver. It squeezes harder, its unblinking eyes fixed on hers. Her energy drains fast. The burden of her pregnancy, paired with a crushing embrace, leaves her struggling for air. She's not just fighting for herself, she's fighting for the kits she'll lose if this monster prevails. Squirrels scatter from the trees above, startled by her frantic yowls. It looks like the end, until a strange tremor ripples through the ground. The serpent hesitates, its head tilting as it senses vibrations it can't dismiss. The bobcat, fading fast, feels it too, a steady thudding rhythm drawing near. Suddenly a figure crashes into the den, a scrappy teenage boy, barely 16, his clothes torn and his face streaked with mud. He's breathless, gripping a crude spear made from a snapped branch and a sharp rock. At his heels, a wiry mountain dog barks wildly, its hackles up as it charges the snake. This isn't a grizzled hunter or a scientist, it's a runaway, a kid who scraped by in these woods alone for months, living off berries and sheer grit. He'd been shadowing the bobcat, not to harm her, but because she fascinated him. He'd watched her hunt, admired her stealth, and when her scream pierced the air, something inside him roared to life. He couldn't walk away. "Let her go," he yells, jabbing the spear at the serpent. The dog leaps in, nipping at the snake's tail, buying the boy a fleeting chance to strike. The spear skids off the scales, but the blow infuriates the snake. It loosens its grip on the bobcat for a heartbeat, rearing to face this new foe. The bobcat slumps to the ground, gasping as the boy stumbles back, pulse racing. The dog yelps as the snake snaps at it, missing by inches. It seems the boy's bravery has only doomed him. The serpent looms, its hiss like a thunderclap, but then a shock. A loud crack cuts through the chaos, and the snake flinches as a dart sinks into its neck. From the den's entrance steps a woman, a wildlife biologist in her 50s, her silver hair pulled tight, her face carved with decades of fieldwork. She wields a tranquilizer rifle, her grip steady despite the madness unfolding. She'd been hunting the serpent for weeks, alarmed by tales of its unnatural size and ruthless kills. When she heard the bobcat's cry, she'd sprinted toward it, arriving just as the boy made his reckless move. "Back off, kid," she shouts, chambering another dart with fluid precision. The boy freezes, spear trembling in his hands as the biologist fires again. The second dart pierces the snake's softer underbelly. Its movements falter, coils unwinding as the tranquilizer kicks in. Within seconds, it collapses, a motionless heap of scales and menace. The biologist drops to her knees beside the bobcat, her touch gentle as she checks its pulse. "Hang on, girl," she whispers, her voice thick with relief. The boy stares, awestruck, as the dog nudges the bobcat's flank, whining softly. But the bobcat's breaths are ragged, her body quaking. The ordeal has pushed her to the edge, and the biologist knows the clock is ticking. The woman turns to the boy. "We've got to move her. She won't last out here." Together they cobble together a stretcher from branches and her jacket, easing the bobcat onto it with care. The dog leads the way, sniffing out a path as they haul her through the forest toward the biologist's outpost. A weathered cabin tucked against a hillside. The trek is brutal. Branches snag their clothes, the boy's arms ache, and the bobcat's faint whimpers spur them on. Inside the cabin, they settle her into a corner piled with blankets. The biologist works tirelessly, cleaning claw marks, offering water, and watching her vitals. The boy stokes the fire, his dog curled nearby, as days crawl by in tense quiet. The bobcat sleeps fitfully, her belly rising with shallow breaths. The biologist worries the kits may not have survived the trauma, until one night a soft mewling pierces the stillness. The boy gasps as 4 tiny bobcat kits squirm against their mother's side, their spotted fur damp and their eyes still shut. She licks them clean, her strength returning with every tender touch. The biologist smiles, tears tracing her lined face. "You're a fighter," she murmurs. The boy grins, ruffling his dog's fur. It's a triumph, but the story takes a dark turn. The next morning, they wake to find the cabin door ajar, the bobcat gone. Tracks lead into the woods, flanked by smaller prints. The boy's heart sinks. He'd hoped she'd stay. The biologist rests a hand on his shoulder. She's free now. Weeks later, a chilling discovery unfolds. The boy, now assisting the biologist's research, spots fresh tracks near the cabin. Not just the bobcats, but the serpent's too. They find its shed skin under a tree, a grim hint it survived the tranquilizer and is prowling again. The biologist's jaw tightens, her rifle in hand. It's still out there. As spring greens the forest, the bobcat and her kits thrive in the wild, their spotted coats darting through the underbrush. The boy and biologist watch from afar, a silent bond between them, but the serpent's shadow looms, a whisper that nature's fight is far from over. What a wild ride, huh? From a death grip to a family reborn, and that snake's comeback. What do you think happens next? Know any other crazy survival stories? Drop them in the comments. We're all ears. Smash that like button if this grabbed you, and subscribe for more epic wild tales. Catch you in the next one. As dusk draped the jagged hills of the nature reserve in a shroud of purple and gray, the bobcat paced her enclosure with a restless energy that set the surrounding pines whispering. Her coat, sleek and tawny, rippled under the fading light, but her golden eyes, usually so piercing and steady, flickered with an emotion no one could name. Was it fear? Instinct? Something ancient and unknowable? For weeks the staff had observed her, their notebooks filling with questions. Rescued long ago from the cruel grip of an illegal fur trapping operation, she'd always been a solitary creature, her trust in humans a fragile thread. Now, her swollen belly told a story of its own, an unexpected pregnancy discovered late, its details shrouded in uncertainty. Outside the enclosure, two figures stood silhouetted against the twilight, their breath misting in the chilly March air. One, a veterinarian with years of scars and wisdom etched into his hands, adjusted his glasses, peering through the wire mesh. The other, a wildlife specialist whose boots were caked with the reserve's red earth, shifted uneasily. Her growls rolled out, low, guttural, not just the sound of labor, but something primal, a vibration that seemed to stir the very ground beneath them. "She's close," the veterinarian murmured, his voice taut. "But this isn't normal." The specialist nodded, eyes narrowing as he studied her erratic movements. The ultrasound taken days before had been a blur of shadows, shapes that hinted at life but refused to clarify. A birthing den had been prepared, a sheltered nook lined with straw and rigged with cameras to capture every moment without intrusion. The team expected a modest litter, 2, maybe 3 kittens, standard for a bobcat. At 8 years old, she was an elder in her kind, her pregnancy a rare gift, teetering on the edge of risk. As night deepened, the staff gathered in the observation room, faces bathed in the flickering glow of the monitor. She crouched low, her body shuddering with each contraction, her tail lashing like a metronome counting down to something unknown. Hours stretched thin, her pacing interrupted only by sudden wrenching snarls that crackled through the speakers. Subscribe for more incredible stories and leave a comment below. Then, with a roar that seemed to shake the walls, the first kitten slipped into the world. It was tiny but fierce, its damp fur glistening as it squirmed and let out a reedy cry. The staff exhaled as one, a fragile relief settling over them. She licked it clean, her rough tongue moving with a tenderness that belied her wildness. A second kitten followed, then a third, each one vigorous, their spotted coats already hinting at the predators they'd become. "4's pushing it for her," the specialist said, his pencil scratching against paper. "She's a fighter." But she wasn't finished. The air grew heavy, the room silent save for the hum of equipment as she bore down again. With a final bone-rattling growl, a fifth kitten emerged. The camera zoomed in, and the collective breath of the staff caught in their throats. This one was different. Wrong. It wasn't just small, it was a wisp, its skin nearly translucent, faint blue veins pulsing beneath patchy, sparse fur. Its limbs twitched feebly, a fragile thread of life dangling over an abyss. The veterinarian's face darkened. That one's fading fast. We've got to move." But her reaction froze them. She nudged the kitten, her nose brushing its frail body, and her mournful yowl softened into a sound no one expected. Low, keening, almost a plea. Then she stepped back, her golden gaze piercing the lens, locking onto the humans watching. It was as if she understood their presence and their purpose. "She's given us a window," the specialist whispered, disbelief threading his voice. Bobcats were territorial, especially mothers, their instincts a wall of claws and teeth. Yet she sat, tense but still, as the veterinarian gloved up and entered the den. The air thickened with tension, the other bobcats in nearby enclosures watching with an uncanny stillness, their eyes glinting like stars in the gathering dark. He lifted the frail kitten, nicknamed on impulse by a staffer watching the feed, and retreated to a makeshift exam table. Its breaths were shallow, barely a flutter, its body cold as frost. The team swarmed into action. Fluids dripped through a needle. A heated incubator hummed to life, a desperate race against nature's verdict. But as they worked, the night took a stranger turn. She didn't return to her healthy kittens, their warm piles squirming in the den. Instead, she lingered at the entrance, her eyes fixed on the incubator, her growls melting into a rhythmic hum, a sound no bobcat should make. "Is she singing?" a young assistant stammered, her voice trembling. The team exchanged glances, unease prickling their skin. Hours later, the kitten's condition steadied, its chest rising with faint determination, but the mystery swelled. A wildlife expert patched in from across the country squinted at the screen and muttered, "That's no ordinary bobcat. Look at its markings." Days bled into nights and the kitten grew, slowly, improbably. Its fur thickened, but not with the usual tawny spots. Silvery streaks shimmered across its back, catching the light like frost on a winter dawn. When its eyes opened, they weren't the amber of its siblings. They were a vivid, unnatural violet, glowing faintly in the dimness. Whispers rippled through the staff. A genetic fluke? A relic of some forgotten lineage? She tended her other four with fierce devotion, grooming them, guarding them, but her gaze kept drifting to the incubator. She'd press her nose to the glass, her hum resonating through the room, as if weaving a thread between her and the struggling fifth. Then, in the dead of night, the reserve security cameras captured the impossible. She slipped from her den, a latch, carelessly left ajar by a sleep-deprived staffer, swung loose in the wind. She didn't bolt for freedom. Instead, her shadow flowed through the compound, silent as mist, her claws tapping faintly on the medical bay's tile floor. The night guard, bleary-eyed over his coffee, froze as she approached the incubator. With a gentleness that defied her strength, she nudged the lid open, her massive paws deft and sure. Before the alarm could sound, she lifted the kitten by the scruff and melted into the darkness. Chaos erupted. Search teams stumbled through the underbrush, flashlights slicing through the fog, drones whining overhead. She was a phantom, elusive, deliberate, her tracks vanishing into the earth like a secret. Dawn broke cold and gray when the specialist found her, tucked into a hidden thicket far from the enclosure's boundaries. She lay curled around all 5 kittens, her body a fortress of fur and muscle. The frail one, impossibly, nursed alongside its siblings, its violet eyes glinting like twin moons. She met the specialist's gaze, her expression a challenge wrapped in calm, as if daring him to reclaim what she'd taken. "She knew," the veterinarian said later, voice hushed over a crackling radio. "Knew better than us." The family was relocated to a fortified habitat, a sprawling enclosure of rock and pine, its borders reinforced with steel and vigilance. A live stream camera flickered to life, beaming their story to the world. The kitten, its silvery coat and violet eyes now a beacon, thrived, defying every prediction. Theories exploded online. Alien blood, a lost species, a miracle stitched into DNA. Donations poured in, the reserves coffers swelling to fund new pens, new rescues, new dreams. Her haunting hum became a nightly ritual, a lullaby that seemed to ripple through the air, and some swore they saw the kitten's eyes pulse in time, as if bound to her by something beyond science. She'd come from a cage of wire and despair, a survivor turned mother, and now she'd rewritten the wild's rules. The fifth kitten grew into a lithe, ethereal creature, its silvery fur catching moonlight as it led its siblings in darting chases through the enclosure. The staff, hardened by years of loss and triumph, watched in quiet awe, their questions unanswered. The reserve became a pilgrimage site of sorts, its live feed a window into a mystery no one could fully grasp. Her journey, and the enigma of her litter, stood as a testament to the untamed, a fragile dance between nature's will and the hands that sought to cradle it, a story whispered in the wind, long after the cameras dimmed. Subscribe for more incredible stories and leave a comment below. At the edge of a dense forest where ancient trees intertwined to block out the sun, and the wind howled through like whispers of forgotten spirits, there lay a place the locals called the Wilderness Sanctuary. It wasn't a typical rescue center with neat enclosures. Rather, it was a chaotic expanse where wild creatures were cared for in near total freedom. Among them stood out a bobcat, a silent predator, a living legend that even the most seasoned keepers regarded with awe. This bobcat had a coat of mottled gray-brown, streaked with black like a map of uncharted wilds, its pointed ears tipped with white tufts, and its golden eyes blazing like twin flames in the dark. No one knew its exact age, but the faint scars across its sturdy frame and its slow, commanding gait suggested it had endured more winters than anyone could count. They called it Wildfire, not just for its fiery eyes, but for the way it roamed the sanctuary like a smoldering blaze, unpredictable and untamable. But on a frigid winter night, as thick fog rolled down from the hills, Wildfire changed. It no longer prowled the underbrush or lounged on high branches to survey its domain. Instead, it sat motionless atop a large rock in the center of the sanctuary, its golden eyes staring into the void. The keepers noticed something amiss. Wildfire refused to eat or drink. Not fresh meat, not the choicest bait. It simply sat there, still as stone, as if awaiting something no one could fathom. Day after day, Wildfire's condition worsened. Its once glossy fur grew dull with dust, its golden eyes dimmed, and the short, proud tail of its kind hung limp like a wilted leaf. The keepers panicked. They tried everything, calling in a wildlife veterinarian, setting small traps with live prey, but nothing could rouse the legendary bobcat. A tense atmosphere enveloped the sanctuary. Whispers spread. Could this be the end of Wildfire, the symbol of resilience and mystery? Then, one afternoon as the sky burned red with the setting sun, a stranger appeared. He was an elderly man, his hair white as snow, his gnarled hands clutching an old wooden staff etched with strange patterns. He entered the sanctuary with a weary stride, yet his eyes shone with a deep, unspoken story. No one knew who he was, but as he approached the rock where Wildfire lay, something extraordinary happened. The bobcat lifted its head slightly, its tufted ears twitching faintly. A spark flared in its eyes, not of vitality, but of recognition. The man sat beside Wildfire without a word. He began to whistle a wild, haunting tune, like the wind howling through distant mountain passes. It was unlike any sound the keepers had ever heard, a primal call that seemed to draw the entire sanctuary into another realm. And then, to everyone's astonishment, Wildfire rose. Its movements were slow, feeble, but unmistakable. It was responding. No one dared speak. They watched, hearts pounding, as the man placed a hand on Wildfire's coarse fur. The bobcat tilted its head, letting his touch rest on its nape, and a low sound rumbled from its throat. Not the fierce growl they knew, but a soft moan, like a whisper from a distant past. Subscribe for more incredible stories and leave a comment below. What was happening? To understand, we must rewind to Wildfire's earliest days at the sanctuary. It wasn't an ordinary bobcat. Before arriving here, Wildfire was a survivor of the wild. Tales claimed it once roamed a forest ravaged by massive fires sparked by human hands. Its pack, other bobcats in the region, had perished in the inferno, leaving it alone amid ash and smoke. Yet instead of succumbing, Wildfire fought on, enduring starvation, crossing icy rivers, and facing wolves far larger than itself. When a rescue team found it, Wildfire bore the marks of a warrior. Scars traced its body, telling of battles won, and its golden eyes gleamed with a wisdom beyond its kind. Stranger still was how it chose the sanctuary as its home. No one captured it. No one caged it. Wildfire came of its own accord, as if it knew this was where it belonged. And there it met the mysterious man, now sitting beside it once more. Back then, he was a young researcher, obsessed with unraveling the secrets of the wild. He didn't just tend to injured animals. He sought to understand them, communicating through sounds he'd learned from the forest itself. With Wildfire, he spent hours under starlit skies, whistling and watching, noting its every subtle move. An unspoken bond formed between them, so profound that no one else noticed. But then he left. Life pulled him into distant journeys, and Wildfire remained, becoming the sanctuary's icon. No one suspected that, through all those years, the bobcat remembered him, his tune, his steady touch, unlike anything it had known from another soul. Back in the present, as the man whistled, Wildfire stirred further. It stretched, pacing slowly around the rock, its claws scraping the earth as if testing its strength. The keepers couldn't believe their eyes. Just hours ago, they'd braced for the worst. Now, the legendary bobcat was reviving, bit by bit, under the stranger's hand. But the story didn't end there. When the man rose to leave, Wildfire leapt down from the rock and followed. Not swiftly, not eagerly, but with clear intent. It wouldn't let him go. The crowd murmured, some stepping forward to intervene, fearing the weakened bobcat might collapse. Yet the man raised a hand, and oddly, they halted, captivated by the calm in his gaze. He led Wildfire to a secluded corner of the sanctuary, where an ancient, withered oak stood. No one paid the tree much mind. It was just part of the landscape, nothing more. But as they neared, the man knelt and dug into the soil beneath its roots with bare hands. Wildfire stood watch, its golden eyes fixed on him. Then something unimaginable happened. From the earth, he unearthed a small wooden box, encrusted with moss and clinging dirt. He opened it, revealing an odd object, a collar crafted from leather, adorned with a blood-red stone that gleamed faintly. The man held it before Wildfire. The bobcat lowered its head, allowing him to fasten it around its neck. At that moment, a sudden gust of cold wind swept through, rustling the dry branches above. Wildfire raised its head, its golden eyes blazing like never before, and for the first time in days, it let out a powerful roar that echoed across the sanctuary. From then on, the tale grew stranger still. Wildfire didn't just recover, it seemed to transform into a fiercer version of itself. It hunted again, pouncing on stray rabbits that wandered into the sanctuary with uncanny speed and precision. Yet what stunned everyone most was this. Each night, as the moon rose high, Wildfire sat beneath the old oak, wearing the collar, staring at the sky with eyes that seemed to seek something beyond comprehension. The man stayed at the sanctuary for a few weeks, but offered little explanation. He said only that the collar was a gift he'd made for Wildfire long ago when they were together. He'd buried it under the tree as a promise to return, but life had made him forget, until word of the Bobcat's decline reached him. Yet the truth was far more complex. One night, after the man had gone, a curious keeper investigated the oak's roots. Deeper in the soil, they found an old piece of leather, sealed in wax to resist decay. Etched upon it were strange symbols, indecipherable to any known tongue, alongside a handwritten note. "The collar is the flame. It will lead to where it began." Where it began? No one knew. But Wildfire's behavior turned peculiar. It guided the keepers to uncharted corners of the sanctuary, unearthing ancient relics, from bones of long-extinct felids to red stones identical to the one on its collar. Researchers were summoned, and they discovered the sanctuary sat atop land once roamed by an ancient breed of bobcats tied to humans in a mysterious, forgotten bond. Wildfire, it turned out, wasn't just a wild bobcat. It was a keeper of secrets, a bridge between past and present. The collar didn't merely revive it, it awakened a primal instinct, turning it into a guide for a discovery beyond imagination. Time passed and Wildfire lived on for months, robust and commanding. But one night, under the fullest moon, it slipped away from the sanctuary. No one saw where it went, leaving only the collar beneath the old oak. The keepers didn't search. They understood Wildfire had fulfilled its purpose, whatever that might be. Wildfire's story spread far and wide, becoming a new legend. The sanctuary opened a research center where scientists probed the mysteries the bobcat had unveiled. The mysterious man never returned, but on cold, windy nights, some swore they heard whistling drift from the forest depths, like a distant farewell from the flame that never died. Wildfire wasn't just a bobcat, it was an enigma, a living blaze, and proof that even the wildest creatures can carry the grandest tales. Subscribe for more incredible stories and leave a comment below. The wind roared like a chorus of restless spirits, sweeping through the towering pines and circling a small cabin tucked deep in the Rockies. It was a frigid winter evening, the kind of cold that didn't just bite, it gnawed at the bones. Inside the cabin, someone sat quietly at a weathered wooden table, hands cradling a chipped ceramic mug, steam rising from the coffee in ghostly wisps. Immersed in the final chapters of a beloved novel, a tale of primal survival in the wild, their eyes traced the words under the flickering glow of the fireplace. The crackling of burning logs echoed through the space, mingling with the faint scent of pinewood smoke and the aged leather of a worn armchair. The weather forecast had warned of an overnight snowstorm, and the gusts rattling the frost-covered windows confirmed the prediction was no idle threat. Stretching to ease the stiffness in their back, a sudden sound cut through the warm stillness, a faint keening cry, carried on the icy wind like a whisper from the void. It wasn't the wind's howl or the groan of the trees. It was alive, plaintive, almost like the sob of a lost creature. Brows furrowing, They set the book down, its pages splaying open like an interrupted confession, and approached the window. The glass, clouded with frost, reflected the firelight within, while the world outside melted into darkness. Squinting, they caught a flicker of movement near the porch steps. A shape, fleeting but deliberate, briefly illuminated by the stuttering glow of the porch lantern. Curiosity stirred, tinged with unease. Wild animals were no strangers here. Bear tracks in the forest, startled deer bounding away, even a distant stare down with a mountain lion. But this felt different. They pulled on a thick wool jacket, its lining frayed from years of use, and slipped into stiff leather gloves. Taking a deep breath, they pushed the door open. The wind struck like a slap, stinging their cheeks and tugging at the hood as they stepped into the night. There, crouched low on the snow-dusted porch, was a bobcat. Its fur, a tapestry of tawny gold and gray streaked with dark markings, shimmered faintly under the lantern's light. But this was no sleek predator seen on patrols. It shivered, its body taut yet fragile, amber eyes locking onto them with an intensity that rooted them in place. Matted patches clung to its coat, and its breath came in shallow puffs of mist. For a moment they stood frozen, human and beast, locked in a silent standoff. Bobcats weren't unfamiliar in these parts, but never this close, and certainly never in such an odd state. Subscribe for more incredible stories and leave a comment below. The bobcat shifted, revealing a swollen midsection. Pregnant? Injured? Their mind raced. A low guttural sound rumbled from its throat, not a growl, but something softer, a plea woven into the wind's wail. One paw stretched forward, tentative, as if testing the boundary between wilderness and shelter. Instinct screamed caution. Bobcats were solitary, unpredictable, but a deeper, quieter voice whispered of the unspoken pact of this harsh land, where survival sometimes hinged on unexpected mercy. Against every ounce of learned logic, they widened the door and stepped back. To their shock, the bobcat didn't hesitate. It padded inside, each step weary but purposeful, its claws clicking faintly on the hardwood floor. It made straight for the fireplace, collapsing onto the rug with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of miles. They shut the door against the storm's icy fingers, sealing them in a bubble of warmth and strangeness. The firelight danced across the bobcat's fur, highlighting the tension in its coiled muscles, the faint tremble of exhaustion. They stood still, watching this wild intruder claim their sanctuary. What had driven it here? Hunger? Desperation? Or a primal thread of trust they couldn't grasp? Hunger gnawed at their own stomach, a reminder of their needs. Assuming famine had brought the bobcat, they rummaged through the small kitchen, unearthing a piece of leftover boiled chicken from dinner, cold but edible. Placing it near the bobcat, they kept a safe distance. It lifted its head, nostrils flaring, but oddly, it ignored the offering, its gaze drifting back to the fire, as if warmth were its sole sustenance. Perplexed, they settled onto the far end of the armchair, maintaining a silent vigil. The bobcat's eyes flicked toward them occasionally, glinting like twin embers, a strange calm settling over it despite the wildness etched into its frame. Time slipped by in silence. The storm outside grew fiercer, snow piling against the windows until the world was a muffled white void. They added logs to the fire, the crackle a counterpoint to the wind's fury. The bobcat stayed near the hearth, its breathing steady but shallow, a creature torn between instinctual fear and surrender. As exhaustion weighed on their eyelids, an unexpected comfort crept in. The bobcat's presence felt like a wordless companion in a night that stretched endlessly. Dawn broke gray and heavy, the cabin buried under a thick blanket of snow. They jolted awake to a sound, a low rhythmic rumble like distant thunder. It took a moment to register. The bobcat was purring. Sprawled on its side, its belly appeared rounder, more pronounced under the dim light. Pregnant, they were certain now. The realization struck like lightning. What if it gave birth here? Fumbling for the emergency radio, they met only static. The storm had severed all contact. Isolated in the mountains, they'd have to rely on instinct and the scattered knowledge of wildlife, none of which included delivering a bobcat's litter. The day dragged on slowly. They shoveled a path to the porch, the cold piercing through their gloves, and hauled in extra firewood, stacking it high against the storm's lingering threat. The bobcat claimed a corner of the living room, its amber eyes tracking their every move. They spread out an old blanket, and though it eyed the offering with suspicion, it eventually settled onto it, a reluctant acceptance. That evening, as the wind softened to a mournful sigh, the cabin filled with a new sound, tiny, piercing cries. They froze, heart pounding, as the bobcat birthed 3 cubs. Their fur was damp, eyes sealed shut, voices a fragile chorus against the silence. The mother worked with quiet ferocity, licking them clean, nudging them close for warmth. They watched, awestruck, a lump rising in their throat. This wild, vulnerable creature had chosen this place for its miracle. The days that followed blurred into a strange rhythm. The mother remained wary, her gaze sharp whenever they approached, but she tolerated offerings of water and scraps, bits of chicken she'd nibble only after they retreated. The cubs grew swiftly, their spindly legs steadying, their mules turning to playful squeaks. They captured these moments in secret, snapping photos with an old camera, the shutters click a soft intrusion. The storm had passed, and the radio reconnected to the outside world. No reports of a missing or injured bobcat in the area, just a wild anomaly. Experts advised releasing them once strong enough, but the thought gnawed at them. Could they let go? Weeks stretched into months. The cabin, once a quiet retreat, buzzed with life. The 3 cubs tumbled over each other, pouncing on shadows, scaling the armchair with clumsy bravado. The mother, silently nicknamed Luna, after the moon that lit her arrival, became a fixture, her wildness softened by the haven she'd claimed. They built an outdoor enclosure, a miniature wilderness with logs to climb and dry grass to stalk, honing the cubs' instincts for the world beyond these walls. Yet each night, Luna led them back inside, curling by the fire as if it were home. One day, while clearing melted snow near the cabin, they found something odd, a tattered collar, mud-streaked and half buried under ice. It was old, its strap frayed as if torn free, hinting someone had once tried to hold Luna captive. Had she been hunted? Escaped a trap? The mystery gnawed at them. In the nights that followed, distant roars echoed from the forest, and Luna's ears pricked, her head lifting as if hearing a call. She hadn't just fled the storm. Something in her past had driven her here to them. Spring crept in silently, snow melting into rivulets that gleamed under a tentative sun. They knew the time to part was near. On a crisp morning, the outdoor enclosure was opened wide, the forest call laid bare. Luna stepped out first, her gait deliberate, the cubs tumbling after. She paused, turning back, her amber eyes meeting theirs, a look of gratitude, farewell, and a deep recognition that pierced their chest. With a flick of her tail, she vanished into the pines, her cubs trailing like echoes of her shadow. The cabin fell silent, its warmth hollow without them. They stood on the porch, coffee cooling in their hands, a bittersweet ache settling in their chest. The wilderness had granted an unexpected gift, a bond forged in a storm, fleeting yet eternal. Turning back inside, they spotted a tuft of fur on the rug, glinting in the sunlight. With a faint smile, they left it there, a relic of a winter that had changed everything. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more incredible stories, and leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for watching, and we love you all.